So, rapper extraordinaire and soon to blow up, XB Valentine. Welcome.
What's up? Thank y'all for having me, by the way, and I appreciate all the nice things you had to say. It means a lot.
Yeah. And just so everybody's, knows our bases, Ricardo, Veronica.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, we probably should have done the intro before,
yeah. Yeah. But just so you know,
Ricardo Vero.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever. She called me Mexicano only because that's my last name.
Oh shit, that's dope.
Yeah.
Right? But he's half Salvadorian, so that's where he gets it from.
Yeah.
That's dope. You got the best of both worlds.
Yeah, exactly. yeah.
All right. So speaking of names, actually, we were wondering, how did you come up with the name XB Valentine?
It's funny. I feel like a lot of people think it's like this crazy story, but so my birthday is on Valentine's Day, and my first name is Bianca, and everyone used to call me B, just growing up. So I just put the B and the Valentine together, and for the longest, that's what I was like called, just B Valentine without the X. And I have finally changed my Instagram handle. I was trying to change it to B Valentine, but someone else already had it, so I put the X in front, and everyone kept calling me XB Valentine. So I was like, that's not really what I was supposed to be named, but people kept thinking the X was a part of it, so it worked. And then now everyone just refers to me as XB. So
I find that interesting. I really find that interesting, like how, with social media and everything, how people really latch onto like your username. How like if you're like if you're like popping on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and people meet you in real life, they'll probably, it's like more than likely they may refer to you as just your Instagram name because that's all they know you by.
Yeah, because they don't know your real name. See?
Yeah.
So we didn't know that your first name was Bianca, so it works. Yeah,
exactly. Did you have any other names before that you kind of like were messing around with?
No, I always went by B Valentine, to be honest, and then just XB came a little bit later on. But yeah, it was always those two.
Okay.
Cool. No, but I mean, I get that 100% because like even with my Instagram handle Vero Fuerte, like even people who don't know how to roll their R's, they'll like call me Vero, and it's really really cute. I'm like, well, you get up for trying. So there you go. But you grew up in a small town like us, right? We were just talking about it, Georgetown, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I did.
Yeah. What was that like?
Oh man, it's really different, I think, compared to like, because I was currently residing in Dallas, so it's a crazy transformation going from a small town to a big city. But the people in Georgetown were definitely just, I think the best way to put it is like they're comfortable. Everyone's kind of used to their day-to-day life and their routines, and I think I've always felt like I was dreamt a little too big for everyone in my town. Everyone had like their black and white what they wanted, and I was always kind of like, oh, I want something that's far out of reach from what's here,
something bigger.
Yeah, so it was definitely a challenge, just being surrounded by a lot of of that comfortability of people just wanting to like do what they were comfortable with, I guess. And even the music scene, there really wasn't a music scene. There wasn't a lot of people making music out there. Luckily, I made friends at the time who were already like dabbling into recording their own music, and that's kind of how I got introduced to that, and it just really went from there. As far as that, I did enjoy it, and I had its perks as well. I liked the school I went to. The small town games are always like a little crazier than anything else. But it definitely had like I said, it has its good and its bad, but at the end of the day, I'm always going to put on for my little small town. So, that's all I can.
Did you, as far as like maybe like early on, because I think you said that you started as like young as 15, right? Like really starting to get it serious as far as like rapping and like making music.
Yes.
As far as that go, being in such close proximity to Austin, were you kind of like making trips, trying to like kind of like put on as far as like, hey, I'm really trying to make it out here. I'm trying to like link up with other artists, other producers, engineers, somebody to record me, something like that. Like, were you making like those trips back and forth between Georgetown and Austin?
Oh yeah, 100%. So I actually ended up meeting this engineer when I was 15. He goes by Christopher Locke. I worked with him for 6-7 years. And I met him at the time. My sister was trying to help me find a studio to record at because I was just recording at home. And she ended up finding this studio called 6th Street Studios in Austin, and he was working there at the time. So I ended up linking up with him, and then from there, like, I just enjoyed working with him a lot. And I was just back and forth. And he was the only engineer I worked with for those 6 years. I maybe worked with 1 or 2 other engineers, but never quite like, it never felt as natural as it did with him. And, you know, I ended up doing a bunch of open mics. I did one, the first place I ever did open mics at was this hookah bar that's no longer there. It got knocked down. It was Forte Hookah Lounge. And I was performing there when I was like 17. I wasn't even allowed to be in there, but
wow.
they would let me come in there and then I would have to leave right after I perform. And I ended up meeting a good friend of mine that goes by Jello Mare. I met her, and that was like, man, that was probably in 2014. And meeting her is what caused me to start, you know, meeting other artists as well who had already been doing a lot in, you know, in the Austin scene. So I started kind of like hanging around with her and meeting all these other artists that kind of, you know, allowed me to network with them. And I started getting other opportunities to perform at other places. And that's how I started going to Scratch House a lot. I started meeting people who were throwing like weekly shows there. And I was just doing shows there. Unfortunately, that venue got closed down during COVID, which is really sad for a lot of people in Austin who've been doing stuff in the music scene. But as far as that, you know, I was definitely doing a lot of open mics, small shows. And then because of Jello, we eventually ended up making a drive out to Dallas. She got me booked for my first show out there. And maybe like the third show I did with her, I ended up meeting the first person that managed me back in 2015. I signed with him, and that's when my trips to Dallas started happening. I was back and forth to Dallas. I started meeting people who were more involved in the music industry as far as just like other artists. In Dallas, I was really meeting people who were part of like working for labels and stuff like that. And that's kind of what led me into like really getting to, you know, putting my feet in there when it came down to like the music industry part of it. So in Austin, it was really just like, you know, I feel like that was like the baby steps, you know, of really learning and experiencing everything by like, you know, meeting the engineer and then doing open mics. And then when I moved to Dallas, and everything just started happening a little differently there. So I really feel like Dallas is where it's at. A lot of people don't realize.
DFW in general, I feel like most of the country sleeps on DFW, for real.
Oh, 100%. I always tell people in Austin, like, man, y'all need to be taking what y'all are doing here to Dallas.
For sure.